Alright, for real this time. Second clap. That's how you know we're getting serious. Sakui, Ditois, Achuta, hello! Do you remember the first time a film let you down? Hi, I do. My name's Am, and I remember very specifically watching The Rise of Skywalker in theaters, waiting for something cool to happen. I thought it would come in Finn embracing that he could use the Force, and then when that didn't happen, in Poe embracing and taking on the mantle of General, and then when that didn't happen, in all of the Force ghosts of the past swarming to support Rey in that cave, and then it let me down. And 6 years later, I am still thinking about it. And now, armed with a shiny new degree, a specific practice in analyzing dramatic literature, which includes films, and a remarkable amount of hubris, I come to you convinced that I know how to fix it. This video will serve as my manifesto in what exactly is wrong with the Star Wars sequels, how I would do it differently, and is a secret submission for Filoni to hire me to write the next major motion picture, which is due to be released in about 4 years' time. Buckle up. Infodump incoming. Part 1. Ye Olde Star Wars. Alright, in order to get anywhere with analyzing the sequel trilogy, we need to go back and dissect the originals to figure out what exactly a Star War is made of. For the purposes of this analysis, we're going to take the theatrical releases and the theatrical releases only into consideration. Star Wars The Clone Wars will color the interpretation because I am physically incapable of stopping myself from talking about it, but I will do my very best not to run away with it. Right. So, the original Star Wars film canon is comprised of 6 films, aptly numbered chronologically 1 through 6, except the latter 3, 4 through 6, were released a decade before the first 3, 1 through 3. I'm assuming you clicked on this video with a somewhat working knowledge of the plot of these 6 films, so we're not going to spend too much time in recap. But we are going to do it anyway because it's fun and I like talking about it. Briefly, the story is as follows. Once upon a time, the galaxy was on the brink of a civil war. In the midst of this, a Jedi Knight stumbles upon a young boy born of the Force. After a series of political shenanigans involving the Queen of Naboo, the boy is taken into the Jedi Order, raised by the apprentice of the Jedi Knight that found him. Roughly 10 years later, the Queen of Naboo, who is now a senator, her life is threatened, and the boy and the knight are tasked with protecting her. While doing this, they uncover 2 armies that are being built in secret, and so begins the Clone Wars. The boy and the senator have to get married in secret, as attachment is forbidden within the Jedi Order, and then roughly 3 years later, the end of the Clone Wars is in sight. The boy and the knight are at odds in the way that only a parental/brother figure and a headstrong protege can be. The Chancellor, who is secretly evil, manipulates the boy into becoming evil himself, using the fear of losing his wife as a motivator. The boy turns evil to save her from death, kills her in the process, and has a very epic and emotional battle with his father/brother figure, who chops off 3 of his 4 limbs and then goes into hiding with the boy's newborn son. 20-odd years later, the Chancellor is now the Galactic Emperor, and the boy is his evil right hand. The son, who had previously not known his heritage, gets dragged back into the mess. There are several fights and weapons of mass destruction. The son meets his father's brother/father/mentor figure, learns about the Force, starts fighting against the evil Emperor. Bam, 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 he learns more about the Force, he learns that the girl he was crushing on is his secret twin sister, and the evil right hand of the Emperor is his dad. The son faces off with his dad and the Emperor, refuses to join the side of evil, is generally so pleasant and earnest that his evil dad changes his mind about being evil, and together they kill the evil Emperor. The dad dies, the son gives him a funeral, and the galaxy is finally free from the grip of evil. Peace is restored, and the Star War is over. Ta-da! Okay, I know, I'm sorry, I said I would keep it brief, and that was the best I could do. It's like holding in a sneeze for me. Honestly, you all should be applauding the restraint that I just demonstrated. An earlier iteration of this recap was an entire hour long, and the one that I just said didn't even include anything from Star Wars The Clone Wars. Anyway, shout out to Branna for listening to the whole first hour version. Okay, so we have this whatever the word is for a double trilogy set. And it's super popular, and so the powers that be, who just bought the rights to this IP, they go, hey, you know what we haven't done in a while? And what would make a lot of box office money? Another Star Wars. If it were me tasked with the second Star Wars, I would start by taking a look at what I'm inheriting. So let's do that. I am expecting audiences to come into this shiny new Star Wars film with this set of pre-existing knowledge. Okay, so Jedi equals green equals good. That's that color set. That's our color language for things. Sith are red, they're bad. The Force is magic that you use with your mind. You can lift things, you can throw things, you can manipulate other people's minds, you can become a ghost, you can do all sorts of fun, interesting mind magic with the Force. There are lightsabers. Oh, you can't even see mine in the new frame. That's so sad. There are lightsabers. I have one up here. And you were gonna be able to see it for the whole thing, but then I changed the way my camera was set up. Sad. Okay. And then we get into characters. There's Luke, Leia, Han, Darth Vader, the Emperor, C-3PO, R2-D2, Chewbacca. Clones is something that you might be aware of, but a more casual viewer will definitely be aware of a stormtrooper. Then there's Yoda. You might know the name of Obi-Wan, Anakin, Padme. You'll know about the Death Star, droids, there are blasters, there are aliens, ships fly. Typically there's no wheels. If you can avoid wheels, aesthetically, you gotta get rid of them unless you're a droid. There are tons of planets, many different languages, sometimes. They're usually subtitled and sound very interesting. Hyperspace makes you go fast. The good guys always win, and the general vibe and like the aesthetic language of it looks kind of like this. It's a lot of futuristic, techie elements, really well integrated into a natural and or worn down environment. It lives up to long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Things are alien and different and techie, but they're very old and well lived in, and sometimes run down and falling apart. And then I'm also assuming that people are familiar with the general strokes of the plot that I just went through earlier. Okay, cool. So, if it was me that these powers that be were asking to make a new Star Wars for more money, I would also make a list of some themes. All right, here we go. So 1 through 3, the prequels. We've got strong themes of destiny/fate. We've got Anakin touted as the most powerful Jedi, the chosen one, the one who has been prophesized to bring balance back to the Force. We have fear as a corrupting agent, the collapse of democracy into tyranny, and then these themes sort of are replayed and build on each other in 4 through 6. This is also interesting. We could talk for days about author's intent and how sequels and prequels do interesting things in regards to theming, especially when, for example, with Star Wars, they were conceived all together, but then the later 3 were produced before and ended up influencing the first 3, and that is a fascinating thing to be studied for later. Anyway, talking about 4 through 6, again, destiny/fate. We've got Luke, who is the son of the Chosen One, the son of Darth Vader. It's his destiny to bring down the Emperor. There's also a lot of themes of external forces. The Force acts a lot more heavily in the original trilogy rather than the prequel trilogy. It does a lot of very interesting and mystical things. It's treated with more of a reverence and as more of a religion than it is in the prequels, which I find very fascinating. And then you've got the classic good conquers evil. Star Wars is ultimately the good guys win. And that really, really shines through in the original trilogy because it is the one where they win. The prequel trilogy technically has this theme, but it's only because we know that the original trilogy comes after it. Ultimately, the prequel trilogy, very tragic, very sad. But here, when we're in 4 through 6, the original trilogy, good, always gonna win. And then we also have the theme of evil not being a permanent state of being. People are inherently good, and you can always turn back. Great. Boom. Easy. This is what Star Wars has grown to be at the point of writing the sequels. We can chat for days about writer's intent, what gets left on the cutting room floor, whether or not Han shot first, but that's not helpful to what we're trying to get at here. We're trying to uncover what are the things that are intrinsic to a Star War, looking back so we know what we are inheriting to move to the future. Remember, I'm pretending that the big powers that be have asked me to make a new Star War so they can make big money. Which, okay, don't be fooled, that's what this is. An extension of an immensely popular franchise, and it's been about a decade, singular, since it got its last boost in sales. It's time to stir that money-making stregonona pot, but that's a discussion topic for a different time. So I'm going to take this sticky note that says consumerism with a Z / capitalism, and it's just going to hang out right here. Held up by a little tribble magnet. Can you see that? You can see that. Great. That's our capitalism, consumerism pin. Ignore it for now. Great. So, what are audiences expecting when they walk into this new, shiny, hypothetical movie? All of this! Plus a secret third thing. That's right. We live in a society, and I'm so sorry about that, but because of it, things that are going on in our society are going to color and change our expectations of and approaches to art. By which, I mean, in this case, films. To quote the late great Tory... Reading is hard, but I'm really good at it. To quote the late great Toni Morrison, all good art is political. There is none that isn't. And Star Wars is no exception. This is our moment of silence for the Redditors that have been sitting on their complaints. Go on, it's all good. I get it. Okay, so there are two facets of our socio-political lives that I think are important to look at here. There's the current film moment, as in what's popular in the genre. Sorry, that's my lightsaber. Just wait a sec.
3. Quiet mode.
Great. I needed my prop back. Sorry. Where were we? So, there are two facets of our social political lives that I think are important to look at here. There's the current film moment, as in what's popular in the genre, what's hip with the kids these days, what are people watching, and then straight up politics. Alright, we're going to start with the 80s. The original trilogy, what's going on with films. The original trilogy is stupid. It's goofy and cheesy, and we don't really dig into psyches so much as we make somebody brood by a window and then go shoot lasers at people. And it's fine! These movies were created for that purpose, to transport you to a galaxy far, far away where there are weird aliens and everything looks ancient but techy, and there are laser swords and mystical powers, and it's built that way because that's what films were in the 80s. According to film historian Tim Dirks, quote, "The era was characterized by the introduction of high-concept films, with cinematic plots that could be easily characterized by 1 or 2 sentences, and therefore easily marketable and understandable. By the end of the 80s era, as a result, most films were not designed for thinking adult audiences, such as Driving Miss Daisy, but were lowbrow for dumbed-down teen audiences looking for sheer entertainment value or thrills. For example, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, James Cameron's Aliens, or Die Hard. No wonder movie dates were so popular. Movies were capitalizing on the teen moment, putting out coming-of-age stories, catering to a young audience, exciting and thrilling, and making a spectacle and an event in the theater." Okay, then we move on to the socio-political context. A New Hope was released in theaters in 1977, and the years leading up to it were busy, to say the least. You've got the civil rights movement, the Cold War, the Vietnam War, the space race, rapid advancements in technology, and that's just from the American perspective. People coming into theaters to see A New Hope are mired in the soup of the 60s and the 70s. They're excited about space and what lies beyond, especially as familiar touchstones of codified cruelty are falling apart before them. Things were shaking up, rattling society's hegemony. Additionally, US Americans' trust in authority was shattered via Nixon. Quote, "The Watergate scandal broke the mold in many ways. In addition to unmasking corruption, lies, and deceit in the White House, it exposed a sitting president to scorn, diminishing the presidency itself. The scandal opened a deep wound in American society. And then add to that the recent end of the brutal, highly contested Vietnam War, the nation's first televised war, and you get a country full of scared, angry people, especially youths, who have taken to the streets protesting the mistreatment of their peers and the draft, who are stumbling to find anything solid to hold on to. You get a country full of people who needed, more than anything, hope. Hope, or the ability to imagine a future better than the past. Hope in the form of a hero so pure that evil all but shatters in his wake. Hope in a father who has a broken, cruel past, but whom the son still believes in without fault. Hope in a father who is still able to be redeemed. The original trilogy is a desperate promise that things will be good and simple again. It pulls on the familiar cadence of Campbell's hero because it feels like society is falling apart. And when things are falling apart, we run to the shelter of familiarity. Things are clear in Star Wars. The bad guys have red lightsabers and wear dark colors. The good guys are in green and tend towards the light. That clarity is a balm against the murky, tangled-up reality of life. It's a story that reminds you to trust in forces beyond, that promises that those who've died don't leave you alone, that no matter how dark things seem, good will conquer evil, and the galaxy will be saved. It lets us believe that this is not the end, that the current unpleasantness can be conquered if we work together. The galaxy is not unchanged after the Battle of Endor. Luke cannot go home. He is no longer the bright-eyed, tan-robe-wearing youngster as we first met him. He's grown up, and the galaxy is changed, and that's a good thing. The original trilogy reassures us that freedom is worth fighting for, that the narrow escapes and the danger and the loss will be worth it, because in the end, the Emperor will be defeated, and peace will return. God, I love these movies. Okay, on to the prequels. Alright, the early aughts for the prequel trilogy. It's time to get edgy. It's the late 90s, early aughts, and there is bank in the film industry. We've got superstars on the rise. We have CGI, sequels out the wazoo. It's time for DVDs, which means an easy and popular way to rewatch the movie. And also for bonus features. God, I miss those. In the years leading up to Phantom Menace's release, James Bond, Jurassic Park, Twister, and Men in Black were setting the tone for action and sci-fi films. We were getting invested in the psyches of our characters. We loved watching them struggle. It's less about the spectacle and more about the characters. Well, okay, it's still about the spectacle. See the CGI and the bigger budgets, sure, but it's also about getting angsty with our blorbos. I hated saying that out loud, please cut that. Social political context. I'm gonna argue that a lot of the social context for the original trilogy carries over into the prequels, as they were conceived at the same-ish time, even if they weren't, like, fully realized then. There's so much of it reflected here. The crumbling myth of US-America military superiority. The massacres and muck-ups in Vietnam come to mind and are reflected in the way the Republic views the Clone Wars, in Anakin's massacre of a Tuskra tribe. There are corrupt, power-hungry political leaders. Rising consumerism and individualism shines through the story of the prequels. A big part of Anakin's undoing is his conviction that he is alone, that he is the most important, the galaxy's most special boy, but that nobody can help him. The prequels are ultimately a cautionary tale about the nature of power and the importance of community. Power corrupts Anakin so thoroughly that this sweet, wounded mama's boy becomes the most feared individual in a galaxy. And not just power, it's power, fear, and control. He is taken as a slave before the movies even begin. Then he's taken from his mother, his only family, forced to leave her behind forever. Then the guy who took him from his home planet dies. His mom dies. He's fighting in a brutal war. His brother/mentor isn't listening to him. His wife's life is threatened. Simply, Anakin is repeatedly forced into total independence, complete isolation. He lacks community and support, and that is ultimately what makes him so easy for Palpatine to manipulate. His fears are so loud because he doesn't have anybody nearby to assuage them. In addition to all that, the early aughts add the tech boom, the turn of the century, rising tension in the Middle East, the advent of the internet, and a rapid turn to global capitalism. And while the population was on the rise, so too was the rise of mass murders of vulnerable peoples. Rwanda, Bosnia, Afghanistan, just to name a few. With the increasing popularity and available access to the internet, awareness of the globe as a whole was on the rise. I highly recommend giving this site a read.
Okay. Bad news, gamers. Apparently, I don't have access to this source anymore. I wrote it over 6 months ago, and now I'm going back and trying to find all of my sources and things and go back through them. And for this one specifically, I clicked on the link that I had saved in my works cited thing, and it brought me to a login screen, and I was like, uh-oh, what's up with that? So I shot the customer service line, or whatever, a little email, and I was like, hey, can I have access back? And they were like, yeah, sure, let me help you out a little bit, what institutions were you working with when you got this thing? And I listed them all out, and they're like, oh, none of those have ever had access. So I'm sitting here, I got the information. I have direct quotes that I remember copy and pasting. I have the links that I copied at the time of copying and pasting. So, my credibility has been trashed. I'm very sorry. I promise I didn't just make these bits up. There was a source, and I'm still trying to track it back down. So, we shall see. I will update y'all as soon as I figure it out. If I don't ever figure it out, that's going to be a really big bummer. But that's why you actually can't give the site a check out, unfortunately. It was really cool. I had a great time reading it. But for all intents and purposes, it does not exist anymore. It's locked behind a wall. Anyway, here's some cool quotes that I pulled from it. Have fun!
I highly recommend giving this site a read. It was very interesting for me personally to go through the decades that happened after my textbooks were written, and I'm just going to read straight from it because I really like the way that they summed up this decade. Quote, "At no other time in history had the entire world been so dominated militarily by a single nation capable of striking with overwhelming force within hours against almost any place on the map. At no other time had scientists possessed the ability to clone mammals or perform other acts of bioengineering so sophisticated that the researchers acquired almost godlike powers to create new life forms and blur the lines of what it means to be human. Nor could astronomers in earlier decades observe deep space with such clarity that they could look back almost to the very origin of the universe to see the formation of now ancient galaxies or discover new solar systems." And all of that makes what the prequel trilogy is wrestling with so crystal clear. As I said before, it's a cautionary tale. It's the story of how a democracy dies, how a republic falls into the hands of a superpowered imperial commander, playing in the cinemas of the nation that is becoming a global militaristic superpower, inching towards imperialism. It's the story of the murder of Jedi children in their school and home a few scant years after Columbine, a story about the pointed, intentional destruction of multiple groups of people at a time when the news of the genocides in Bosnia, Rwanda, the DRC, Sudan would have been in the headlines. It's the story of a young man promised a way to protect the people he loves, a way to be a hero for an assumed audience of young men who will be swarming to enlist in the wake of the War on Terror. It's the story of the world as you know it, spiraling out of control, the powers that be too strong for you to do anything but watch in horror as everyone around you applauds. But, even with all of that, even though episodes 1 through 3 are deeply tragic, they come into theaters with the pre-existing cultural knowledge that this is not the end. Not of this story. They show us that things might feel out of control, the worst they've ever been, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We end Revenge of the Sith back on Tatooine, staring off into the horizon as the twin suns set, hurting, but solid in the knowledge that the suns will rise again. Everyone knows what comes next. A new hope is on its way. I love these movies! Okay. Whew! Okay, so, even though audiences might not be consciously aware of all of that. It lurks in the undertones, in the subconscious. It's part of what makes the movies so timeless. There are depths underneath the surface to be plumbed. They have staying power not only because of nostalgia, but because they mean something. They're struggling with scary questions about the world, fighting to make some sense of the human condition. Have I mentioned recently how much I love these freaking movies? My lightsaber keeps falling, whatever. Now I feel like we have all of the things that we need to go into the sequel trilogy. I know what I'm inheriting, what audiences are expecting of this shiny new film. I've traced back how the original film spoke to the audiences of their time, and I've outlined some of the ways in which they are responding to the political climate, and I am so excited to see this new set of installments! And then...
Somehow Palpatine returned.
what happened? Ladies, gentlemen, et al. Of the jury, our three suspects: The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker. Something happened, somewhere in here, that lost the public's good opinion of the Star Wars franchise. And for the purposes of this bit, we're ignoring the fact that people didn't really like the prequels. Because now I live in a world where they're beloved. We're ignoring that for now for the sake of the bit. Thank you so much. Who was it? Was the sequel trilogy doomed to fail from the start, or did something go wrong along the way? A misstep that could have been avoided? Let's investigate, starting purely with narrative and form. None of that icky people and politics stuff. Movies only. Alright. Exhibit A. The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens goes like this. Lights up on the now familiar galaxy far, far away. There's a brand new bad guy in town, working for the new militaristic superpower. He's got the scary voice modulator and the red lightsaber and everything. The Resistance is back, and there's a guy with a spunky droid, of course, and they're getting super important intel from a secret informant. One thing leads to another, the guy gets caught, then escapes with the help of a stormtrooper with a change of heart. They crash land on a desert planet, and the rest is history. Of course, our good old friends Leia, Han, and Luke are all there, all grown up, changed, and weighed down by the years that they lived unobserved. They get the plans to destroy the big weapon safely to the Resistance. Those are used to bring down said weapon via heist-like escapades, and the day is saved. In all honesty, The Force Awakens is a good film. I like it. It's not without its flaws, or dare I say plot holes, but it's a solid movie all around. It's funny, it's pretty to look at, it has interesting new characters and old friends. While it leans a little heavily on borrowing the formula that worked so well for A New Hope, it didn't not work. Say what you will about the hero's journey, but it's a handy little bit of familiar storytelling that can get you pretty far. The Force Awakens does a good job of walking the line between the old and the new. It's strong both as a sequel and as a second installment. It takes... What? That's the same thing. Who wrote that? It's strong both as the beginning of a new trilogy and as a second installment of a story that we're already familiar with. It takes what it inherited and runs with it, pokes at our expectations and nostalgia, sprinkling in its own flavor as it goes. The new trio is strong, although Poe could have used more screen time, it's whatever. They're interesting, and that's very, very good for a new cast of characters. I'm intrigued by these three, and I can see the sprawling avenues of character development before them. Rey, who is going to find somewhere she belongs, with people who won't leave her behind. Finn, who's going to do good, who is going to find a cause that he's proud to fight for. And Poe, who, no, I know I had something for him. He's just not in the movie that much. You know what, we're just gonna... He has a little sticky note. We're gonna come back to him, and Kirk is gonna have to hold him. Boom. Sideways Kirk, holding on to Poe. Great. And then there's Kylo Ren, who's actually an interesting character, and I hate that. He's not powerful. Not in the Force-sensitive kind of way. There is that. He's very strong. But also in the authority way. He isn't poised or set on schemes the way that Star Wars villains of the past have been. He's dramatic and emotional and erratic, which is interesting. It's new. His colleagues don't respect him, but Phasma doesn't respect him, Hux doesn't respect him, and it seems like Snoke doesn't like him so much as he likes the idea of having Darth Vader's grandson as his apprentice. He's interesting, and I want to see what happens with him. It's like watching a car crash. With him, there's a violent beauty to it, and I'm sure he's going to be his own destruction, and that can be very compelling narratively. The Force Awakens is a solid foundation for a new set of stories. It fulfills its sequelic duty by bringing back the main trio while introducing a new cast, who are their spiritual successors. Rey, Poe, still has a pin in him. Rey, Finn, and Kylo are strong new characters because they cannot be mapped one-to-one onto the original characters, but they are indisputably related to them. All in all, The Force Awakens did minimal harm to the franchise story-wise, so with your permission, dear jury, I'm going to remove it from the list of active suspects. Exhibit B, The Last Jedi. Keeping in step with the original trilogies, this middle installment breaks up the main cast and gives them individual quests to further their character developments, and also to separate the Force shenanigans from the anti-Emperor shenanigans. I don't know why we do that, but we do. And The Last Jedi does it too, so. Thus goes The Last Jedi. Wait, how does it start? I swear I literally just watched this movie. How does it start? Oh my god. Okay, so. A rebel base, stop me if you've heard this one before, a rebel base is about to be attacked by the First Order, led by Hux. There's a series of shenanigans. Poe pulls a pilot move. Many rebels die for the cause, they get away, this angers Supreme Leader Snoke. Cut to Luke and Rey on Jedi Island, where Rey is trying and failing to convince Luke to train her to be a Jedi. Cut back to the rebels who thought they were safe, but oh no, the First Order was able to track them through hyperspace, which is very bad. And now we've got the conditions for the main 3 arcs of the movie. There's Rey and Luke arguing over whether or not the Jedi should return. There's Poe chafing under authority. And then there's Finn and new character Rose on a spy mission to break into the Dreadnought and disable the hyperspace tracker so that the Resistance can get away safely. One thing leads to another, ships get blown up, we end up on the planet Crate, where there's an epic standoff, Luke uses the Force so good that he dies, and ultimately our heroes get away to fight another day. I don't know what the people on Rotten Tomatoes are on about, and I take back everything that I've ever said bad about this movie because holy shit, it's so good! Ugh! Rewatching it, mind-blowing. I don't know why I had hate in my heart for it earlier. Rian Johnson's style of directing and writing lends itself so well to a movie so full of subversions of expectations. He takes the Star Wars canon and flips it on its head, all the while giving the cast broader and deeper characters to play with. We get to face down the internal politics of the Rebel Alliance. We laugh in the face of the cultural understanding of the Star Wars mythos. We see the personal cost of the cause. We are faced with the idea that things might not be as black and white as we wish they were. I am thoroughly fascinated by what Johnson's done here, as the balance between breaking apart audience expectations and building on what we know is masterfully kept. We get characters who are wrong, who make the wrong call, but in ways that are so deeply necessary to their characters that it isn't a bug, but a feature. Johnson's visual storytelling will never not delight me, especially as his attention to detail and knowledge of how to direct the audience's attention lead to a multiplicity of Easter eggs and clues that reward watching closely. And I hear people saying that the casino subplot is functionally useless, and I hear you. However, while it doesn't directly drive the plot, Finn and Rose's time on Canto Bight serves the important purpose of thematic function in this film. The Last Jedi is intentionally showing us the messy underbelly of the legendary galaxy we've come to revere. On Canto Bight, Finn is faced with the discovery of a morally grey world beyond what he's previously known. We are shown the little things, the mistreatment of animals and the servitude of children, the apathy of the rich. The casino subplot, as far as I can tell, is being used as fuel for lighting the fire of justice in Finn's character. So far, he's still been struggling with that me against the world mentality. And this feels like an intentional setup of a motivator to turn him into the saber-wielding hero we've come to expect from Star Wars protagonists. It's showing us how little acts of kindness and rebellion are just as important as the exploding ones. I would be so fascinated to know what Johnson would do with the third part of the new trilogy, because it feels like he's setting up something very intentionally here, and I would have loved to see what the trajectory of the path of that is, because I think I know, but sorry. Anyway, we're getting close to tangent territory. I will make a different video defending The Last Jedi and just dissecting it into the smallest little pieces. We'll do that later, some other time. As a second installment, The Last Jedi is functionally perfect. I'm sorry. While it's not without its flaws, it takes the momentum of The Force Awakens and it runs with it. It destabilizes it, leaves us breathless and excited and full of questions, nearly unable to wait for the third and final installment. So, dear members of the jury, The Last Jedi is not our culprit. Which only leaves one suspect on the board. Exhibit C, The Rise of Skywalker. Here we go. The highly anticipated Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, goes like this. Somehow, Palpatine returned. That's how it starts. Somehow, Palpatine returned. So, Kylo finds out about this, and he's on a mission to get a Wayfinder, which is a magical compass, so that he can find and kill Palpatine, who is a space zombie now because of evil Force magic. Palpatine convinces Kylo that he's been masterminding everything this whole time. Snoke, Rey and Kylo's connection. Third example. And he offers Kylo control of a new empire. The Last Order, as opposed to the First Order. This one's the last one, and all he has to do is get rid of Rey. Cut to Finn and Poe, who are running a rebel mission together. They discover that there is a spy in the First Order who's helping them get information. Cut to Rey, who is doing Jedi training on her own, supervised by Leia, but she loses focus because of her connection with Kylo. Finn and Poe come back to base, and they share the news of Palpatine's return with the rest of the Resistance. And now we have the setup for the two lines of the movie. Rey, Finn, and Poe searching for the second Wayfinder so that they can get to Palpatine's hideout and kill him, I think? Unclear. And then the second line is Kylo chasing Rey down in order to turn her to the dark so that they too can be the most powerful Force individuals in the galaxy. They're a dyad. Whatever that means. And God, I'm sorry. I know I'm not doing this justice, but I can't get over the somehow Palpatine returned bit. God, just somehow Palpatine returned, huh? Somehow Palpatine returned. Somehow Palpatine returned. Somehow. Somehow. That's the bit that I have an issue with. Somehow. Sheev Palpatine has never in his life done anything somehow. I'm so sorry. You're gonna have to indulge me for a moment at the insanity wall. Just come over here. Insanity wall. Meet the audience. Audience. Insanity wall. This is the actual insanity wall. We're gonna put it up together. This thing, and you're gonna get to see the whole of it, but there's a lot. This is a complete map of Palpatine's plan. Starting slightly before the Phantom Menace and ending just before, the bit that's at the thing. I step away from my cool filming area and immediately lose my mind. That's why we call it the insanity wall. Okay, there are, fair warning, a few little, don't get scared, but there are a little bit of Clone Wars or extended universe little bonuses, because actually my Star Wars degree is in the Clone Wars, and I only studied the main movies as part of like my core curriculum, and I couldn't help myself. So, all right, let's freaking go. Okay. To start us off, we have the Sith Rule of Two. This is a classic little thing that the Sith love to do. Okay, so basically, how it goes. This is even before the Star Wars movies pick up, right? There's this cool little rule of two. It means there are only ever 2 Sith at a time, by which I mean the ideal formation of the Sith is to have a master and an apprentice. When you only have 2 users of the dark side, you're able to consolidate a lot of the power, and so the 2 end up being way more powerful than any of the Jedi, because the Jedi, using the light side of the Force, the power is spread out, whereas when there's only 2 on the dark side, they consolidate. So a long, long time ago, the Sith were like, dude, I have a great idea. 2 of us. More power. Super awesome. Okay, that's as far as we can go. Okay. Alright. That's our prehistory. Great. So then, because of this rule of 2, we have another phenomenon that happens, and that is that the Sith apprentices are constantly being pitted against one each other. So that it's sort of like, what's the word? Keeping them in check, because when they're turned against each other, they're not turned against the master. Even though there is the classic rule that the apprentice always kills the master and then takes on a new apprentice. That's how the Sith life cycle goes. But what we're worried about is the apprentice turning. That's the important thing here. Okay. So then we have... Goodness gracious me. Okay. Oh, right. And then also, in prehistory, there was a Sith versus Jedi war. The Jedi emerged victorious, and the Sith got pushed to the shadows. So they're really grumpy about that. That's why they're enemies. Great. So, now that we have that, we have this guy. His name is Sidious. That's the name that he chose for himself. His name is Sidious, and he's studying the dark forces under Plagueis the Wise. That's his master. Rule of 2. Plagueis is the master, Sidious apprentice. As apprentices are wont to do, he kills Plagueis. Great. Now he's taken on the role of Sith Master. He's the guy in charge. Awesome. As the guy in charge, Sidious, the Sith, invents a character. Because Force power isn't good enough. And he's looking at the way that the Republic is structured, and he's saying, oh, how interesting. The Jedi and the Republic are buddies. He doesn't like that. The Jedi currently have a little bit of political power, and the structure of the Republic was very much built by and with the Jedi. He doesn't like that. He wants total galactic rule. So he invents a guy. He basically makes up an alter ego for himself, and he calls this alter ego Sheev Palpatine. He puts Sheev Palpatine. He is acting as Sheev Palpatine. He assumes this identity, and he goes on to Naboo, and he gets himself elected into the Nabooian Senate. Great. Love that for him. Okay, so, Christ almighty. While on Naboo, so he's got this whole senator plan. He has another plan. Sidious, we're gonna find out very quickly. A lot of different moving pieces. So, this is where the two... Actually, we're gonna move this down, because there's gonna be a line here of things that he's doing as Palpatine, the senator, and then eventually bigger political guy. And then also, as Darth Sidious, the Sith Master, he is doing other things. So, as the Sidious side of himself, he is talking with the Separatists. And basically what you need to know about this, if you're not familiar with the lore, all you gotta know is the Republic has like a part of the galaxy. And then there's a different part of the galaxy that's outside of the Republic. And there are some planets and systems within the Republic that don't want to be there anymore. They want a little bit more relaxed rules. A lot of them are either like Hutt-owned. So they do a lot of not very fun things. Pikes, if you're into like spice. Hutts, if you're into slaves. Basically, corrupt leaders of planets don't love that the Republic is, kind of, sort of chill. And they want to leave. They want more money, they want more power, they're trying to leave. That's what the Separatist movement is. So, Sidious, the Dark Sith Master, goes to the Separatists. He's like bros with all these guys. And he brings his apprentice, Dooku, who is a turned Jedi. Dooku was a Jedi, got turned, corrupted by power. Now he's the apprentice to the Sith. So, the Sith Master takes his apprentice, Dooku, and he gives his apprentice the job of leading the Separatist movement. So that's going up here. Don't worry, there's going to be a middle thing. Great. So, Dooku is the head of the Separatist movement. He's reporting back to Sidious as the Sith Master, Sith and Apprentice. Great. Love it. Awesome. So, we're going to keep with Dooku for just a moment because as head of the Separatist army, and not army, they're not an army yet, but as leading this Separatist movement, he's been put in charge by Sidious. He commissions a droid army to be built because Sidious is preparing for war. So he tells this guy, Dooku, hey man, here's some money that I am funneling from other places. Go build yourself approximately 2,000 billion droids. And he does. Okay. Great. So we have a droid army being built in secret. We have the Sith Master cosplaying as just a sweet old Nabooian man who is running the freaking thing. Okay. Dooku, we're staying with him for a moment, gets the Separatists to fully declare their intent to leave the Republic. They're they were a political faction, and now they're actually, we're out. We want power, we want money. Great, 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 great. Oh my god. This is so tangled. I'm so sorry. You're gonna have to bear with me for just a moment. God, oh god. What am I looking for? I'm looking for the other loose end, because there's another little part. Right. Okay. Part of this gaining Separatist stuff, Sidious is allying the Sith with various antagonists that are well known throughout the galaxy. There's the Pike Syndicate, the Trade Federation, the Banking Clan. All of these guys are relatively morally corrupt. Pikes are doing black market spice dealing. There's the Trade Federation does something, nobody really knows what. Banking Clan, they got a lot of money. Whatever. Okay, so the Pike Syndicate. Good lord. Sorry. Okay. Sidious gets word that the Jedi Master Sifo Dyas has commissioned a clone army. Because Sifo Dyas had a vision or caught a vibe or something, and he was like, hey, the Republic doesn't have a standing army. I got a bad feeling about that. Let's make one. So, Sifo-Dyas, independently of all this, Sifo-Dyas commissions a clone army. Sidious finds out about this army and sends the Pikes to go kill Sifo-Dyas. Right? Okay. Pikes allied with Sidious. They kill the Jedi Sifo-Dyas, who commissioned a clone army for the Republic. Now that Sifo-Dyas is dead, Sidious has control over this cloning project, and instead of canceling it, he goes, hey, wait a minute. I have a really, really great idea. So he switches the template, like the guy that they cloned to make the clones. He switches it to Jango Fett, the bounty hunter. And he commissions the implantation of biochips in the clones' brains. These are, on paper, the biochips are written as aggression inhibitors. So that this is something that we find, this is where Clone Wars comes into effect a little bit. But yeah, whatever. We will come back to that. Remember those chips. They are super duper important. Oh my god. Was this a bad idea? Probably. Okay. Okay. We're in this, once we've like reached this point, we are about at the time when the Phantom Menace starts. Okay. So, since Darth Sidious is allied with the Trade Federation, he is able to orchestrate the Naboo trade blockade that is happening at the beginning of Phantom Menace. Now remember, Sidious is on both sides of this, because he is acting as a delegate or something. He's like in the government as Palpatine on Naboo, and he's also as Sidious telling the Federation to be like, hey, cut him off. Let's really poke him where it hurts. Okay? So, the result of this trade blockade is to gain sympathy for Naboo. When he's able to gain sympathy for the planet Naboo, he is able to get his character Sheev Palpatine more into the galaxy's eye and spotlight, and he's able to cast himself as this really humble guy who comes from, oh, poor Naboo, they, like, had to go through that terrible thing, and that, like, really sucks for them. Like, wow, isn't he so brave? Isn't he so awesome? Blah, 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 whatever. Yeah, that's that. And, in addition to this, the current Chancellor, whose name is... Valorian? Something like that? It builds distrust in his, like, current administration. Because, like, why isn't he doing anything about this whole Naboo thing? He must be a weak guy. God, we really should replace him with someone really cool and smart. An unintended side effect of this blockade is that Palpatine meets Anakin, aka the Chosen One. He immediately recognizes the power in this kid, because all Force users are kind of able to immediately clock him as, like, something's up with this child, bro. And that plants the idea in his head to get Anakin on his side. But that happens later. Okay. So now that he has sympathy for Naboo and distrust in the current Chancellor, Palpatine is able to manipulate the polls. Not directly, but in, like, a social experiment kind of a way. He basically makes himself look so cool and awesome that they elect him to become Supreme Chancellor. And this is perfect for him because the Clone Wars are about to begin. The Separatists separated. That's a big bummer. It's time for the Clone Wars, which is right here. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. Attack of the Clones is happening sort of like right in between this stuff because we need to discover that the droid army exists and the clone army exists in order to get to where we're going. Speak of the devil. So Dooku, under Sidious's command, starts hiring assassins to take out loyalist senators. The loyalists are the opposite of the separatists. They're the guys who are like, we should all be one big happy family. Guys, let's not break up the galaxy. Senator Amidala is one of them. This is what gets Obi-Wan and Anakin involved again. But this is also working to his end of taking out everybody who disagrees with him. This is one of the ways he's doing that. He's telling Dooku to tell somebody else to go kill all the people who disagree with him. And eventually, if that plan works out, he will have just a room full of people who agree with him and who love him so much, and they are going to say yes to everything that he wants. And wouldn't that just be so nice? Such a great fantasy. And I'm so glad that that doesn't happen ever in real life. Okay, is that everything? No. Okay, great. So now we're in the Clone Wars. We're fighting for several years, killing clones, killing droids, blah, blah, blah. Okay. As a result of this war, as with most wars, the Republic is losing a ton of money. The Outer Rim, which is... think of the Star Wars galaxy as, like, 3 concentric rings. The Outer Rim is the, like, most outer one. Tatooine is one of the planets that's in there. This is, like, the Wild West, uncivilized land, and I say that with full knowledge and understanding of what that means. Okay. Great. So yeah, torn apart by fighting. People, especially in, like, the core, which is Coruscant, like, where the main politics are happening and, like, the rich people are living, they're getting pretty sick of this. Okay, so that's what this card is. The Republic's morale is weakening. They're getting very desperate for peace to come. And so the Chancellor is given emergency wartime authority. So he's in charge of the galaxy writ large already. They give him even more power to do stuff that's, like, a little bit against charters and things, because they're at war, and they're like, oh my god, we're so desperate. Let's funnel some of the stuff that used to have to go through, like, the Senate and, like, have people debate and, like, vote on things. Instead of going through the whole process, since we're at war, listen, we gotta let this guy just kind of we trust him to do the stuff that needs to get done so that we can end this war, bring back peace, stop losing money, blah, 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 blah. Sound familiar? Yeah. Upsetting, that. Anyway. My goodness, it's so tangled. This horrible, horrible web. Alright. This is the second. He's given even more wartime authority. You can't see it all, can you? He's given even more wartime authority than he was before. This is done twice. At the beginning of the war, and then towards the end of the war. They're, like, really sick of it. And so, they do it twice. He gets so much power and authority gets consolidated into this one role, where the Republic used to be a republic. It's slowly becoming more and more just one guy who has all the power and tells everybody to blow things up. Great. And just for future historians, I am recording this in the United States of America, the year 2026. It's April 1st. And I'm feeling some kind of way about putting this map up. Okay. Right. Going back to this commissioning of assassinations. This directly impacts Anakin Skywalker because of his secret wife, Padme. And now, the Chancellor knows about his secret wife because the Chancellor... Move my mic here so I can actually talk to you. The Chancellor, aka Sidious... You're with me? You're with me. Okay. Has been a sort of mentor figure to Anakin. He's very much been... My phone just buzzed. Where did it go? You know, just sort of grooming him is the word I'm looking for. And they're like buds, but this is because Sidious has the plan to get the Chosen One to be his apprentice. Rule of 2. Okay. But, these assassination attempts are like a turning point in Sidious's ability to get Anakin on his side, because he's able to manipulate his fear of losing his wife, his fear of death, to lead him away from the Jedi. Have I ever told you the tragedy of Pelagius the Wise? Boom. Easy. Great. Okay. Yep, there it is. Offers fatherly counsel to a hurting and angry Anakin. Classic stuff. Okay, we need to pause for a second and run it back just a little bit, because right now we are, this is the end of Attack of the Clones. And I've spoken a little bit about the war, which happens during the Clone Wars, and we are approaching the beginning of... No, we already talked a little bit about Pelagius the Wise. We're at like the beginning/middle of Revenge of the Sith. And this is where we need to go back to way earlier in the plan with Sifo Dyas and the clones. Because, remember how I talked about those organic biochips that were said to be aggression inhibitors? That's what they were on paper. Bad news, they were not aggression inhibitors. They were brain control chips that Sidious had put in every single clone member. And this is what allows him to execute Order 66, aka the Temple Purge. He's gotten rid of senators by hiring assassins. And now, he's got to get rid of the Jedi. The way he's doing that is by taking their soldiers, basically flipping a switch in their brains and being like, hey, kill them. And they do, because they have brain implants in their brains. That's Order 66, Temple Purge. And with this, now we're reaching like the middle end of Revenge of the Sith. He is able to declare the Jedi as traitors on public television, sets them as the scapegoat and the symbol of this loathed war, and is able to paint the Temple Purge as like this really good thing that's ultimately like positive for the once Republic, now Empire. Can you see that? No, that's way too low. Okay. We're gonna put it right there. Great. Okay, so we're in the end game now. Hang in there. Whoops. Whoops. Okay. This is the point when Anakin swears fealty to Sidious and becomes Darth Vader. We're back to Rule of 2. We now have a master and we have an apprentice. Sidious is the master, Vader is the apprentice. Great. Lovely. This is the time when the Chancellor, that role is renamed to the Emperor, because he already has all of the power anyway. Most of the senators are dead, and so are the Jedi. Nobody is there. He destroyed all of the checks and balances that existed. He is now the Galactic Emperor. Hooray! He sends Vader, his new apprentice, to eliminate the Trade Federation heads on Mustafar.
So not only did he destroy the Senators and the Jedi, he is now going after literally anyone else who could reasonably talk to another group of people and be like, actually, I don't know about this guy, let's get out. He kills the Trade Federation. Goodbye. He kills the Banking Clan. Goodbye. So there are no Jedi, no political opponents, nobody in any politics anywhere. It's literally just him and a bunch of guys who are like, hooray, we like this. He has total control of the galaxy at this point. And then, just because now he enforces his entire galactic rule through the stormtroopers, who are the clones that he brainwashed. He stole thousands and thousands of clones, human beings. They're now stormtroopers. Clones to stormtroopers. 66. Great. Vader, and he swapped people out. So we now have what are called Nat-born officers, which are basically people who work in the Imperial Army, but who are not clones. They were born naturally, Nat-borns. Okay, great. Now, was any of that, were you able to follow any of that? If not, good, that proves my point even more. Knowing all of this, Misters Abrams and Torrio et al., what do you mean somehow Palpatine returned? You inherit all of this, and the best you can give me is somehow Palpatine returned? That's straight up insulting. Sirs, I'm insulted. I'm disappointed in the both of you. And we haven't even gotten to the whole Palpatine has a granddaughter thing. And also the whole, like, Kylo and Rey and kiss. I don't even know. We can't go there. We don't get to go there yet. Because you inherited this, and then you kind of just did this. You kind of just did this. And you said, who cares? Who cares? You can just do whatever. You did that in the first literal minute of your video. So we can't talk about anything else. Because you already took a shit on the floor, and now we gotta talk about it. Look what you made that poor man say. Oscar Isaac is a brilliant actor, and you made him say, somehow Palpatine returned. And my gripe here isn't even with the fact that Poe, the character, doesn't know why this is happening. I'm fine with that. It's actually okay if your characters don't have all the information, as long as that information is revealed at some point. We spend the rest of this movie fighting this weird, goopy tube guy. He's there now. And I'm not ever satisfied with just the space magic excuse unless you explain it, and you explain it well. It's fine. It could be fine. But you didn't tell me anything. I don't have enough information to go along with you. You can ask me to take your hand and walk with you on this magical space journey. But you gotta give me a little bit more than just somehow. This is a new thing for Star Wars. People coming back from the dead has not been established as a thing that people can do. And okay. What about Maul? I hear you saying, and listen, Bestie, I'm so sorry, but we can't talk about Clone Wars right now. Did they both fall down a tube? Yes. Did they both come back with machine parts to move? Yeah. Sure. Fine. Whatever. But to be fair, Maul got chopped in half, which is something that you could, like... If you've got force power, you could maybe heal your lower torso and be like, okay. He fell down a tube on a planet that had breathable air. Sidious got electrocuted and then thrown down a chute on a ship that then exploded into 1 billion little tiny bits. They are not the same. And I'm pretty sure they explained bringing Maul back via magic. I could be wrong, but I remember several several episodes that we spent with the witches doing witch magic. Palpatine didn't get that. We're just considering the main canon right now, okay? And in the films, when people die, they stay dead. They can be ghosts, but a body coming back and talking to people isn't currently on the table. Saving people from death, or cheating death, has been floated as a concept, but it has not been proven. Well, it's gone now because you tore it off the wall, but the whole Darth Plagueis thing, that can be read as manipulation. Total bullshit, a promise of something impossible, but nevertheless enticing, offered to someone who was desperate enough to believe in it. Right now, there is no canonical, in-universe justification for resurrection. It is an insult to ask your audience to just go with it, especially when you have Disney resources available to you. At this point, I would accept an explanation in the opening scroll, but they didn't even give us that. Somehow Palpatine returned. Palpatine's back. People are hearing voices. Isn't that weird? Isn't that crazy? This is lazy writing, if you don't mind my hubris. God, and I think what pisses me off the most about the whole somehow Palpatine returned thing, aside from everything else that I just talked about, it felt like we were working towards interesting themes of resurrection and resurgence regarding old ideas. I mean, we're in the realm of the New Republic, the First Order. There are people who are following old ways in modern times in an attempt to regain that former glory. Hell, I mean, we started off the series with Kylo worshipping the warped, burned helmet of Darth Vader, a striking visual representation of that revitalization. If it's just Palpatine again, fine. Whatever. But if it isn't, then we're in the realm of being faced with themes that make us confront our own capacity for evil. If there's not a big, bad, conventionally evil zombie overlord, then we as an audience have to sit down with the idea that maybe it's not a single individual to blame for massive acts of darkness. Maybe it's the misguided, the zealous, the overambitious, the scared. Maybe worshipping the past gets us stuck there. Maybe the scariest thing is not learning from those who came before. Maybe the real horror is that by idolizing them, we fail to see their failures, and suddenly we fall into the same holes, make the same mistakes, walk their same path. Maybe what we're really afraid of is that we're not as far removed from our past as we think we are. Maybe everyone, even our heroes, are just people. Maybe nothing is black and white. Maybe the lines between light and dark are really just vague shadows. Maybe you won't know when you've gone too far until you're completely blinded by the path you've chosen. Maybe the only thing that can keep you from getting lost is someone else pulling you back. Maybe it's our relationship with others that will save us. But we don't get to have that. We get somehow Palpatine returned. Don't worry, it's that evil old guy brought back by space magic, but he's dead now, for real this time. We promise. They did such a good job of killing him with even more Space Force magic. God, sorry. Sorry, I'm letting the Palpatine thing go. I'm letting it go. I apologize. I'm not being objective here. I have been attacking creators left and right in an attempt to find someone to blame for a perceived wrongdoing, and that's not really fair, especially when we consider outside circumstances. I remember how we started this whole thing, and it's super popular, and so the powers that be, who just bought the rights to this IP, they go, hey, you know what we haven't done in a while, and what would make a lot of box office money? Another Star Wars. The conceit of this sequel trilogy was not a writer or a filmmaker making a passion project. While there were people working on these films who are fans, by their own admission, they are ultimately not the ones in charge. No. That, my friends, is the big cheese himself. Ultimately, what happened with these movies is that Disney bought out the rights to Lucasfilm and the Star Wars IP, and then they set to work making that IP make them money.
I got so caught up in the glory of loving Star Wars that I forgot. I'm not George Lucas. I'm not being fake asked to write a movie in the sense of a piece of art that comes from my soul. It's not a passion project. I'm being fake asked to make a widely sellable product to a horde of nerdy white boys. A product. In analyzing only the plot structure, I failed to remember or take into account a very large portion of this final series of films' context, the impetus for their creation. It's completely different from the originals because it's not a movie. It's a film that's a part of a franchise, and those are two very different things. I'm taking my artist eyes off for a moment, and now it's all laid bare before me. The reason everything feels so disjointed in the sequels isn't because there were different people writing them. I mean, the originals were that way, and they turned out just fine. And for the sequels, the writing teams that Disney assigned were strong. They had J.J. Abrams, Rian Johnson, Lawrence Kasdan, Chris Terrio, Michael Arndt, 5 dudes hired on for their experience in the field. Most of them writers or producers on some of the biggest blockbusters in 2010 sci-fi. And Lucasfilm's president, Kathleen Kennedy, was a constant in the production for all 3 films. They were good investments on paper, and they should have rocketed the sequels into the stratosphere. But without my artist vision, I am made to prioritize the finances over the story. At the end of the day, the creators of this movie, they didn't have final say over the product. And as much as I would have killed to be a fly on the wall in those exec meetings to get confirmation on this, I am 95% sure that the Big Cheese decreed that changes to drafts must be made for the good of the product's viability. If that is our first priority, then one piece of context becomes more important than anything. Projected box office sales. While I, as an artist, am personally of the opinion that while making a work, one must take into account their audience, I am also of the opinion that not everything is for everyone. It's actually super awesome and healthy if not every piece of art is made completely flat, so as to appeal to the entire universe. That doesn't explode the box office on paper, though. Creative integrity is often a business risk, because making a strong artistic choice opens your film up to the ever-dreaded criticism, and even worse, negative Rotten Tomatoes scores. It would be naive, or downright irresponsible of me to continue discussing the sequels without bringing up the incidents. By which I mean, of course, the fandom's reaction to this third suite of movies. The Force Awakens went fine, reaction-wise. There were some complaints about borrowing too much structure from A New Hope. There were comments that characters were too shallow or didn't have enough backstory, but overall, people were okay with the new Star Wars. There was a very vocal faction of fans that bullied and harassed Daisy Ridley off social media, who were generally racist and misogynistic and unpleasant, but they were a faction, not the loudest narrative. The film still received high reviews. It did well in box. And then The Last Jedi. And despite spending a whole day of research on this, trying to hunt down why specifically, exactly, people were so pissed off about this movie, I have yet to find a definitive, rational answer, but here's my best shot. Starting with the bare facts. The Last Jedi was released in theaters in 2017. That's important, remember that. It was directed by Rian Johnson, who already had a few well-done movies under his belt. He wasn't brand new to the industry. It added a new character to the cast, Rose Tico, played by Kelly Marie Tran. And then, 3 days after the movie's release, internet popular far-right white-ring supremacist Paul Ray Ramsey decided to be an asshole on Twitter and make comments on trans body, spurring harassment and trolling of the actress on social media. Sometime during the week of the movie's release, someone edited Rose's Wikipedia page, which is the Wikipedia page, but like specifically for the Star Wars fandom. Someone edited it to something absolutely disgustingly racist, which I refuse to read or have depicted here. And this, of course, spiraled very quickly into an all-out attack against the wokeness of the new movies. People spreading their hate out from Tran onto her co-stars, sending Tran death threats, hate, and vitriol so constantly that in June of 2018, which is half of a year, 6 entire months after the movie came out, they were still doing this, to the point that she deleted her Instagram. And not to, like, stir the pot even more, but let's just put on our thinking caps. What could possibly have happened? But I can think of a major event that happened in 2017 that might have made racists and misogynists feel a little bit more comfortable being very vocal and open about their bigotry. What was, sort of on the periphery in 2015 with Daisy Ridley and John Boyega? I'll give you 2 guesses and a hint. It rhymes with Bonald Gump. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Kelly Marie Tran's co-stars and her director came to her defense, and there was a rally of support for her at the San Diego Comic-Con in 2018. But the damage was done. The Last Jedi still currently sits at a 41% audience rating, and a quick glance at the audience reviews reveals that even in the present day, people hate this film. And as much as I hate to make generalizations, the usernames and profile pictures of these reviewers tend towards white male presenting. And their complaints are now the more vague that the film is too different from what Star Wars should be, which reads to me as the watered down, sort of trying to fly a little bit under the radar continuation of the racist hate. The Phantom Menace, which is the name given to the loudest, most bigoted voices in the online Star Wars community, declared The Last Jedi too woke. God forbid. And they garnered a lot of negative press for the franchise. After the Twitter storm in the first week after the film was released, box office sales dropped by 76% on the film's second Friday. And after its second theater weekend, sales were down 67%. Now, I didn't get a degree in business. I got one in good writing. But that drop seems like it might have been a little bit concerning to the big G's, especially when, in response to hating the wokeness of The Last Jedi, trolls convinced people to boycott Solo, tanking its box numbers too. So I can imagine that J.J. Abrams was just handed a note by Disney that just said, fix it. What happens with the sequels? What went wrong? The answer is stupidly easy. I can't believe I'm 20 pages into this script and like close to an hour of filming before coming to it. Consumerism / capitalism. It's the money. And also, the rise of far-right sentiments in mainstream culture, but it's tied directly to the product here. So, it's racism. And bigotry. And that's effect on the sales of a product that just had people in it. It was just a little bit different. I love it when Chekhov's sticky note works out. Duh! The killer of artistic expression. Obviously, we had something good and interesting, and then a bunch of white fanboys got scared that a pillar of their identity was being taken away. And since they are all deep down very scared, very hurt individuals, they lashed out with all the hatred and loathing they could muster to hide those very deep insecurities. And then the company that makes the product said, hey, I want to make money. Throw your scruples out the window. Bring Palpatine back. Throw Rose in the freaking Rose shredder. I don't want to see any of that. I don't want to see anything slightly interesting or different. I want to make money. I don't care how you do it. Just end this thing. Mr. Lucas, if God forbid you are watching this for some reason, I am so sorry that they took your work and burned it on the altar of profit. So the cast, Miss Tran, Miss Ridley, Mr. Boyega, Mr. Isaac, I am so sorry that those fanboys were such jerks. And Mr. Abrams, I'm sorry I was so harsh earlier. I'm sure you did your best. There's nothing wrong with the sequel trilogy. At least nothing more wrong than there was with the originals. It's not perfect. Big whoop. Nothing is. And, this is no one in particular's fault. Except for all the racists and misogynists. You guys suck. And you make the world worse for everyone. I hope you have a good long sit down with yourselves and change for the better. You're gonna be a lot happier. I promise. My dear friends of the jury, we've reached our conclusion. I'd like to take a moment to thank the guy who does Cinema Wins, actually, because the two-parter that he did on The Rise of Skywalker really helped me reframe my approach to this film. It reminded me of the day, all those years ago, that I saw The Rise of Skywalker in theaters and was deeply moved by it, by getting to bear witness to pure Star Wars magic as it unfolded before me in real time. It was a day that brought my whole family together. Multiple generations of people all sat in one place to have a shared experience. There's nothing to be fixed here. What's done is done. And unfortunately, I will never, ever get to know the secret machinations, the board meetings, and the rewrites that had to be made, what went on behind the scenes that influenced those decisions. Ultimately, choices had to be made, and people made them to the best of their abilities. There wasn't necessarily any malice behind those decisions. I know it can feel that way sometimes, especially with pieces of media that are so near and dear to people's hearts. Sometimes it's the case that the memory of a movie becomes so wrapped around itself that the nostalgia is what you mean when you talk about it. I'm always going to think that I know better than the showrunners, because what I'm calling Star Wars is actually a messy bundle of feelings and childhood memories wrapped into the cracks between the plot elements. When I talk about loving Star Wars, I'm not just talking about the movies. I'm talking about playing lightsabers in the backyard and seeing re-releases with friends and making snarky comments over popcorn while huddled under a blanket with my best friends. I'm remembering cons and the hours spent bent over a sewing machine and the feeling of a camcorder in my hand as I make my very first film, a recreation of A New Hope with my stuffed animals in my childhood bedroom. I'm remembering a story that I've made my own, a story that I found comfort and delight in, a story that has been there to return to on rainy days, a story that has spurred me to rant for several hours to a camera, the story that brought me and you, two complete strangers, together. But at the end of the day, it's just a story. And the story of the sequels, in broad strokes, goes like this. Once upon a time, in a galaxy far, far away, on a small desert planet, there lived a scavenger. She lived alone for a very long time, waiting for the family that promised her they would come back. Despite her solitary life, she loves openly and freely, which leads her to take in a lost droid under her wing, eventually bringing her into the company of a freshly deserted stormtrooper, and then some of the galaxy's most infamous figures. Time has not been kind to those figures, but they're keeping on despite it all. In this same galaxy, there is a knight, the grandson of evil, nephew of the light. He and the scavenger are linked through the Force, each drawn to the parts of themselves they see in the other. Through the course of the films, and with the help of several friends, they learn that their pasts do not define them, that old texts and traditions aren't worth more than the people that surrounded them. The sequels teach us that it's never too late to return to the light, no matter how far in darkness you've been living. I mean, it's about that if you squint. But for the sake of curiosity, series of shenanigans. There's a series of shenanigans. Whoa. Articulation. There's a series of shenanigans. Pole pose.